Hey everybody, welcome to an episode of Orange Slice. We're talking about the latest and greatest in web design.
The latest.
The latest. Today's episode, we're going to cover the obligatory topic of predictions for web marketing and anything digital for 2021. We have David Kley here, the CEO of Orange Design. So if you could just kind of tell me what your thoughts are on what's going to happen over the next year, especially given this year and what happened this year.
Well, I think the biggest thing to really consider is better designs and like who's who, and then just the massive influx of video. I think those are like the key 2 points that, if you're not having something that stands out in 2021, or if you don't have something that a broader coverage of all your information. So, I found you on Facebook, Google Maps, YouTube. There's going to be additional sources from just their website. I think that's going to be really key. And you're already starting to see a lot more of that. Just when you look at referrals to people's sites in analytics, I mean, mobile and like referral sources has skyrocketed. I mean, now it's, for the majority of sites, you're talking over 60% of all visits coming from, whether it's even local or otherwise, it doesn't matter anymore.
So like a Facebook or YouTube.
Facebook, YouTube, Google My Business or GMB. Or any other referral source where you can have media.
Videos are expensive, though.
They can be. I mean, obviously, we invested in a setup here, but, I was talking to a client about this just yesterday. I said, look, if you just want to take a video of yourself talking about something, first of all, buy a microphone, because audio is huge, right? If you don't have good audio, as we've experienced in the past,
yes,
one time, the mics weren't turned on and like we had great video and bad audio, and it was like unbearable to watch because it sounded so terrible. But I was talking to somebody the other day. I said, look, go on Amazon, buy like a little twisty tripod thing that you can mount your phone on. They're like $15, maybe 30 if you want like a really nice one, right? And then just buy a microphone that's like Bluetooth or something like that. Just have something to where it's not the average horrid whatever type of video, right? To where you're shaking all around. It's like, hey, and don't get me wrong, there are a lot of popular figures. I don't know if you ever watched like Grant Cardone. He does have mobile stuff, but it's really high quality. He's always in focus. And again, the thing with video is, if a picture says 1,000 words, what does a video tell you about a business or an individual?
1,000 pictures,
right, or more, right? Because technically, it is 1,000 pictures. If you want to be nerd out, which we love to nerd out around here. 60 frames per second, that's 60 pictures in 1 second. Does that make sense? Yeah. So like in an hour, millions, well, I don't know the calculation. Somebody do the math for me. But anyway, it's a lot. So
it's interesting you said video, because last year, if we would have had the same conversation, the big push from 18 to 19 into 20 was voice. And whenever you think about it, video is just another form of voice.
Well, I think now they're starting to combine them. So it was podcasts, let's be clear. Voice is podcast, right? So I'm listening to this when I'm in the car. I'm listening to this, when I'm washing the dishes or doing whatever. I think, people, it's easy to consume media now. Mm-hmm. And I think that you have to have something that's in each category. So we were talking about voice just now. You can also take a video and extract the video, and now you have your podcast that you can upload to all those platforms that's minus the video. So you still have plenty of media.
And you have all that material for SEO and all those other things that we can get into on a separate tangent.
I think, SEO is never going to go away. I don't until, Google fully automates it, which they can't because there's so many businesses, mm-hmm. that would need that. And they, organic SEO is, it levels the playing field. The big guys weren't always the big guys, and the small guys can become the big guys depending upon how they optimize their stuff. And again, videos and having rich media that goes beyond just here's my website and a couple of Yelp and Yellow Page profiles and things like that. I mean, we have people all the time that come in there and they have no idea. They have no idea what's needed. Or some of the more established people, they have some things already set up. Generally, that's just due to them being around for a long time. And by the internet crawling other sources and gathering information. So
if you could give one piece of advice to a business interested in video, what would you tell them?
I'd have to give two. Okay. Invest in good equipment. Doesn't have to be high-end equipment. You can go buy a regular Canon camera for, couple $100, find one on Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace or
Right.
something like that, or Amazon, used Amazon. Um, Invest in good equipment. If you have the means to do so, spend a little bit more, because generally speaking, better lenses, better equipment is going to give you a better end result. Same thing with audio. If you buy a $5, made in wherever microphone versus a $400 one, they're going to sound completely different.
Right. But if I buy a Ferrari, it doesn't mean I know how to drive it.
That's true, but that's why generally a person that doesn't want to commit a lot of time to it should probably stay away from the higher end stuff, because it can take more time to learn. I mean, we recently just switched out our equipment. We're still, trying to figure out a lot of it, just because now it's so much different. There's so many more features. There's so many other things that we can do with it. Going from, an ultra low frame rate to a high frame rate. How smooth do you want things to look? So the other part to that was, invest in the equipment. But the other part was have a plan for that, right? Have a plan for your media.
Not just, hey, I bought this thing, honey.
Yeah, I bought this thing, and we're gonna, do this jittery picture of all of our trucks or our staff members, and I'm gonna walk through the front door, but I don't know what image stabilization is to where or a gimbal, to where it's like smooth. When you see these different types of videos that people are envious of, right? When you're like, man, that's really good production. It's not just the equipment, right? Because I've seen, just in my research, from doing, hours of research trying to find what was the best thing. A lot of it came down to, it was the actual person. Now, the equipment can help, right? But it's really about, because they were taking like under sub $1,000 cameras and producing amazing looking things because they knew the techniques. Now, again, you don't have to know all that, but you do have to have a plan. So am I going to take separate little things and stitch them together? Am I going to do one long thing with voiceovers and little clips? Or am I just literally going to say, like, here's like an FAQ type of video? If you were like a real estate agent and just sit in front of a camera and say, here's how you sell a house, right? Here's why you should list on Zillow or things like that. So that would be like your short videos. It's usually, logo intro or whatever and a person talking. Or do you want to do like, here's, so on the homepage of a site or on the banner area, because now on Facebook you could have videos, the banner area, do you want to have a company explanation, right? How deep into it do you want to go? Right. And that really changes, the whole perception of a company. Or even like I'll give you another example. If you want to combine videos and websites, do you ever notice how like you're a little bit happier when you go to a site and there's like a cool video in the background area?
It loads quickly.
Well, yeah. Well, that's optimization. But yeah. So, but it's just cool, right? There's something extra. There's more of an experience. It boils down to like experience, and I think that, granted, you have to have a lot of other things in place, but once you get them there, what's separating you out? So,
right.
But again, we're going to drone on about video forever because we're big fans of it.
Did you say drone on?
Drone on, yeah. And there's a joke in there somewhere. We have drones too. So if you're looking for drone photography or videography, we have that too.
Before I finish out this
short plug
conversation, it's interesting that so many, like, we're old. We don't know what the hell TikTok
You're
is.
old. I'm not old.
But it's.
I think I'm like 30 forever. It's a good age. I'm going to stick with it.
It's interesting to see how many viral-ish / popular videos are done just on a vertical iPhone 7.
Sure.
So there's a different time and place for videos.
Well, I think the funny ones, yes, like humorous ones. I think what you're talking about probably alludes more towards like when you say viral. You can have viral marketing videos, but generally those are like better production quality, if that makes sense. I don't think you're going to see a lot of things professional use, that are going to be able to be shot on something like that. I think professional use, you're going to have the quality, and it doesn't have to be amazing. You can sit down and shoot, like I said, a little cheap tripod and a good microphone, and you've got the basics. I mean, even if you compare one of the newer phones, like the latest Galaxy, whatever, the latest iPhone, whatever. I mean, those are pretty good. A lot of them can shoot 4K, and you don't really need to shoot 4K. I mean, there's advantages and disadvantages. It really depends upon what you're trying to do. But if you just shot a regular video with good audio, they explain something, and you had some video editing software, Final Cut, Premiere, something like that. You chopped off the part where you went to switch the camera off, or whatever, right, just to make it look a bit nicer. You don't have to have all these additional skills. I mean, you can crank out 3 or 4 videos if you were really about it, 3 or 4 a week, or even 3 or 4 a day, depending upon what you're trying to do.
Very cool.
And now you have, a whole robust library that you're not just relying on one place for people to find you. Now, Google owns YouTube, so they're always going to try to cater people to their platform. They're going to try to get people in there because then they can serve them advertisements, right? Because that's where Google's revenue comes from. Trust me, they're not trying to sit there and just pay for all these data centers to host everybody's video. They're trying to promote people. So having good videos, and also making sure you have a plan to use that media. Just to reiterate, splitting that video off, making sure the audio goes somewhere. So SoundCloud's another good place where you can have your video content.
You can do a lot with a little.
You have one video that's in 20 different places.
Cool.
And now you have optimization in multiple areas that can showcase your brand in a place and in a way that people otherwise wouldn't have seen you.
Excellent. So that's a really good insight into what to expect in 2021, or at least an influx in kind of the focus on videos. And that, really relates back to search and SEO and delivering content to people. What other sort of prediction would you have for the coming year?
Well, I really think that, what I see a focus on now. So web design used to be something that was very complicated. Okay. And it still is, depending upon what you're trying to do.
Right.
So, but now, back in the day, you'd have a site with having a picture at the top and a Word document pretty much underneath it was like the highlight, right? Then they went into like sliders and banners. God forbid if anybody ever remembers like those 3D tiles that used to flip over.
Sound.
Yeah. Oh yeah, autoplay, things like that. So, first of all, I think that at least hopefully we've got rid of all the gaudy stuff for now. I don't see as much of that, right? You don't see as much of that when you're looking at that. I really see a focus on like that, on or at least the majority of the major players. Let's say that what I call
as in agencies or companies,
brands. Both, I think both. Okay. So because an agency will create something that's high quality for their high end clients, right? So, but a real big focus on quality. Good photography, good videography, just because it showcases who what I call the thought leaders are. Mm-hmm. If you look at the top, and this isn't in every industry, but I think it's definitely on the move up. Look at all the results on page 1 of Google. If you exclude the directories, like your Yelps and Yellow Page things and different lists that have come out in the past years.
Paid
ads, that too. Well, paid ads generally they spend more money because they spend more money on the landing destination because they know they're spending money to get people there directly. Mm-hmm. Like it's cost per click versus just people getting there organically. But spending more time on the design to thoroughly flesh that out, that's what I'm seeing more of like on the front page of Google, because those people invest in the design, they invest in the media, they invest in getting additional backlinks and additional referral sources. And the designs, overall, sometimes, they're not good. They're just modern. Even if they're new, they're not good. But you can see that there's an attempt there to move things forward and make it really nice. Now, what I've seen in the top, let's call it 30 to 50% of those thought leaders, generally speaking, those are very strong in design. It's very unique. You'll have video elements or moving elements or interactive elements. And you see more of that. Generally, those are custom built, mm-hmm. right? Going back to what I was saying earlier, web design used to be complicated. God forbid trying to, create your own server account and go through GoDaddy and like dealing with DNS. And it's like, what, right? Like nobody, average people couldn't figure it out. But now you don't even have to host your own site. You go to Squarespace, boom, here's your template. Wix, GoDaddy. So many people have those now.
Which are options for people.
Which are, I think they have a place when you're trying to get started. It really depends like where you're starting from, mm-hmm. right? Because I don't think that to become more successful and kind of move your business along, you don't have to have a $50,000 to $100,000 website. Now, will a $50,000 to $100,000 website, if it's done correctly, because you can do them wrong too, right? But will that site be more successful? Yes, because think of why it's that much. You have multiple elements. You have media elements. You have photo shoots. You have more time to spend on design. You have more people working on it so that you can catch errors in design or better ways to make the page flow. And generally speaking, when you're talking about site builds, as you know, because you've been involved in proposals, content. I mean, when you look at the lower tiers, generally there are less pages. So one of the things, though, I hate, though, when I see is like, these sites, you can get 10 pages for $3,000 or whatever. It's like,
it doesn't mean anything.
It doesn't. It usually doesn't. Yeah, I mean, there might be some people who are genuine about that, but I mean, 10 pages is not really going to get you anything but landing pages for other things.
Right. So design is definitely changing and evolving to incorporate all this multimedia.
Can I elaborate one thing too?
Sure.
Like when we were talking about the designs, what I see a lot of it again in the top tier sites is more like magazine style layouts. Magazine. If you look at the magazine article, if you ever, whatever magazine, let's say you look at a Grammy Awards one, or you look at like Motor Trend or something like that, they have these really dynamic layouts, a lot of overlays, a lot of things that overlap. They have a lot of typography, just really cool looking stuff. And again, back in the day, and browsers have advanced, significantly too, to where you can do more things. But, you can have a lot more of that overlay and also make those overlays responsive, so it stays in place. It's not only at this resolution. Mm-hmm. So use of more what I would call dynamic designs, creative designs, that's what I see in the top ones. And, one of the reasons that those would cost more is like, try to design that, right? And not just one page. If you're doing like 3 pages in a magazine, okay, cool. And that a lot of that's just going to be tons of text with some pictures dropped in, but on a website, it's like, every single category of that site, so a top level page, a sub level page, the home page, the contact page, if there's a FAQ, if there's a video or photo gallery, like you have to design all those and all kind of make that initial home page or that initial design phase flow through the whole site. So that can take. I mean, we've quoted things that were hundreds of hours. Because you're doing it page by page. You're starting with nothing and saying, okay, I'm gonna drop in a picture. I'm gonna drop in some colors. What font do I want to use? How do I want to organize this? And I think that people are starting to catch on to what really goes into it.
Excellent.
That's a long answer.
Well, no, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with a long answer. So design-wise, your prediction is that it's going to be more stylized moving forward. And
I think you already see it. I think you already see it.
People need to keep an eye on that.
I also see a step back to simplicity. Because like
clean.
So like the definition of luxury is light and space, right? So you see sites using a lot more white space, right? Because light and space, right? But it creates something that feels better. Like if you look at like Christian Dior, one of those sites, it's like solid black text, lots of white space, really color, vibrant images dropped in, and that creates an air of luxury or prestige, right? And through that contrast, that can create a certain emotion. I think that people now, and it's definitely agencies, they're starting to understand how to make something evoke an emotion, right? Evoke a feeling. Like, right. How do I want somebody to feel? So we designed a site the other day, that was more blue in nature because we wanted people to react a certain kind of way to that using blue and white. But there were certain areas we wanted people to focus on. Well, it was now more red, right? It was more bold, more dynamic. And again, I think there's always been color theory, but I think that there's a big tie-in to more of those elements now. Cool. There's more of an importance. It's not let's just create a website. Well, it's like, what are we trying to do with
honestly,
it, right?
Web has only been around for 30 years, so
I think only gotten good in the last 5.
The art form is in its infancy still. So
sure.
I mean, we're all learning new things.
Well, so I think 2021, you're going to see just more of the white space. I mean, you already see that in templates. Like if you go out and buy like one of these templates, it's $50 or $100. A lot of those have that spatial element that I was talking about. They're more spread out. You don't see a lot of things that are grouped tight together. Like tight together now looks old. If you've got a lot of things that are grouped really closely together.
Right. And let's move on to the next subject, but I'm sure you wanted to mention most people look at sites on their phones now, which is a whole different design theory.
Sure.
We'll get into that next time. But you did mention content and things like that, like what people are searching for in terms of just bare bones letters and words and sentences. Mm-hmm. Do you see that moving any different direction? Because it's gone through a lot of different phases.
Content.
I
see it just getting more specific.
Example.
So people use the internet for a lot more than they used to, right? Think about it just like this. Like 10 years ago, did we have like Alexa, Google Hub, Home?
She's listening.
Yeah, exactly. They're always listening. That's why we don't have them in the office. And everybody know all our secrets. But I think that with the internet becoming like people's go-to source, like let's not look in a book, let's not look anywhere else. We're literally going to ask the web.
Right.
Now granted, you have Alexa and Google, there's other different ones, but usually those are pretty much your two major players, right? So if I can just say, hey Google, blah, 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 they give me an answer. So, and people are like, well, how do I get into that? Well, you just have good content, right? There's not really a way that you can go about submitting something directly to it. Google's going to basically look at what would come up in a search result, and they're going to say, okay, here is, what that is. And they can read to you the excerpts from that site because it's text. Like AI is really a fascinating thing. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's some scary things about it too, but if it's continued to be used for good, then it's amazing. I mean, the fact that you can have this arbitrary thing, let's say this was an Alexa thing, and I just say, hey Alexa, what's the weather going to be tomorrow? Hello, the weather on Saturday, blah, 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 is going to be, wow, right? Think about that. It's just amazing. But so we could talk about professional uses, right? So we don't want to get into all the amazing things that can be used for in just cool ways, but to use that for business, I definitely think FAQ styled things are going to be.
People are asking questions instead of looking for specifics.
Yes. So, like for example, if you were like an injury attorney, what do I do what's the first thing I do after I've been involved in a car accident or something like that?
Right.
But that's not a direct thing. You're not saying I need an accident lawyer.
And you can phrase that 100 different ways.
Correct. So, and generally, with those FAQs, you want to elaborate on all those different ways, right? But getting people to your site. So we talked about videos, right? Videos, they can get you to your site through different ways. Well, different types of content can do the same thing within your site, right? So people tend to think about this very linear, that I need to optimize for this thing. This is the thing, or these are the things, the phrases, the words that are going to make me a bunch of money. What if they don't even know they need you yet? Right. So it's like, I just need to figure out what to do. So, all right, plumber, right? We talked about a lawyer. That's one use case, right? So a plumber, what do I do if my XYZ pipe bursts? And then you would say, that would be the title of your FAQ, pipe burst repair or whatever, blah, blah, blah. That would be like your keyword, right? So pipe repair, pipe burst repair, plumber, obviously, if you just want to get generic. But if you want to get specific, what to do if XYZ pipe bursts? Well, plumbers know the most likely pipes to burst, where it's a irrigation system or one that's in the home, and they can create 5 topics just on that, and even 5 videos if you really wanted to be the cool person, and have all this media and say, hey, I'm gonna on your little tripod thing, right? Let's talk about what happens if this thing bursts. First of all, this is high pressure, blah, blah, blah. So if this bursts, you're gonna have experience, blah, 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 right?
So it's like. I know nothing about plumbing.
And I have to say blah, 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 because I have no idea on how to fix a pipe or how to, what you should do after a car accident, maybe call the cops, I don't know. We have lawyers that are clients that we can refer you to if you need that. I have no idea.
For like pipe winterization,
right.
I know nothing about plumbing, so I wouldn't know
how do I optimize my home for winter?
I don't know.
There's a good FAQ.
I don't even know how to search for that.
Right.
If I was a homeowner.
Right. Or how do I winterize my irrigation system? How do I winterize my sprinkler system? Things like that. So again, all these, and you can take this idea and run with it for any business. I mean, no matter what business you have, people are going to have questions. And the downside that I see that people tend to do they get in a hurry or they just don't understand, is that they take these FAQs and they stick all of them on one page. First of all, it's harder to find. There's little SEO value because it's got to crawl. I mean, obviously a longer page can help SEO, but if it's on 50 different topics, there's no clarity to it. And Google's
not organized.
Not organized, but there's no clarity because you've diluted the value of any one of those by having all of them, right? So look at when you do a search, you go to Google, you type in something, look at where it bolds the things, in the search results. It's usually the URL, it's very specific. The URL is literally your question, right? And then there's a sentence that's either snippets of your question chopped up or it's your question verbatim.
So in terms of 2021, what would one piece of advice be that you would give to content writers like myself?
The easiest way to think about it is people are like, well, I don't know what FAQ is. What do people ask you when they call? When they call us here, How much does web design cost? Okay, it depends. Here's some factors, right? Or what are you trying to do? Or how do I rank better? Or how do I get my site away from this other person that I'm no longer wanting to work with? Basically, you take those and you try to create really good content that focuses around that topic. And if you get asked that question the same way every time, dude, there's your FAQ.
Right. And I actually have a pretty good example of that. In the healthcare industry, there's no reason, or people these days don't even go to the phone book. And if they do, they're very antiquated. Antiquated. But one of the most annoying things that, onboard healthcare people get asked is, do you take this insurance?
Mm-hmm.
Why would you need to call someone to figure that out?
Right.
You should be able to go to their website.
Insurance info, click.
Yep.
We take all of these, or you could even optimize around, insurance people for this specific, or medical services that take this.
Yeah.
Right. You can have individual URLs.
And make it easy, especially because the whole range of people who need medical services.
Geo-target it to where they know. Yeah. That's one example. So medical industry, you could do around insurance. You could also do a lot of content that is based around what to do if you're injured in certain type of way. Is how to treat ankle sprains or whatever. Carpal tunnel. Yeah, you're a content writer. You know all about that. But
it's getting fuzzy.
You'll be fine. You're young. You're not old, like you said. But that's one example. I think FAQs, because people have the ability now to easily ask questions. Even on your phone, you don't even need a device. If you go to Google and tap the microphone icon, this is what I need.
Yeah.
Right? Or, how do I do this? Or what do I do if this? That's your FAQ list. We've created ones for clients, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of FAQs. And when you look at something like that, so talking about, going back to SEO a bit, because I think, all these things we're talking about, they're all kind of related to that.
Right.
And it's like, what do you predict in 2021? Well, I predict that you're going to have to do more to compete as a top player, because the top players are already in all these places, and the top players are going to continue to expand on that, right? So you're going to have to do some due diligence and create different forms of media, different ways of getting people to your site, different keywords where everybody's not fighting over the same thing all the time.